Hey there, it's Jeff Lerner here, and in this video we are going to talk about 5 things you need to know before buying your very first home. It's a huge decision, and doing it right or wrong can totally change the direction of your life. Doing it right can be one of the greatest things you ever do for your life. Doing it wrong can be one of the biggest disasters for your life. So before you buy your first home, hopefully you haven't done it yet, you can watch this video and make sure you do these 5 things. You're probably excited. If you're watching a video about buying your first home, it means you're at least thinking about it. Maybe something's happened in your life and you think that it's time. So I want to encourage you to proceed with a little bit of caution and make sure that you watch this video and that you have these 5 pieces in place, these 5 boxes checked, so to speak, before you buy your first home. So the first one, and I feel like I'm going to pop a lot of balloons with this one. I'm going to deflate a lot of spirits. But you want to make sure that, first of all, you have all other debt paid off. Also with that you have 6 months of living cash in reserve, enough money that you could live off of your savings for 6 months, on top of and before and in addition to any costs associated with buying the home. Now that may all sound like a lot, but here's why I say that. First of all, whatever sort of level your life is at right now, if you're renting or if you haven't, basically haven't bought your first home, you've got a certain sort of economic calibration with your bills and your lifestyle and your discretionary expenses, your entertainment budget, all that good stuff. From my experience, both for myself and working with a lot of young people that are trying to kind of figure out where they want to go with their lives, a lot of stories have baked into them a failure to fully appreciate how much more expensive life was going to get when they bought a home, whether it's utilities, whether it's taxes, not just present taxes, but future taxes, tax increase, costs of insurance, costs of damage. Somebody puts a hole in the wall when they're moving the couch. I own a lot of homes, and I've owned numerous homes that I've lived in. It's just especially if you have kids, way more expensive than people think. The reason I say you should have all other debt paid off is if you have any debt, it means you have certain money going towards debt. And frankly, if you were flush with cash, you'd have all your debt paid off. So if you don't have your debt paid off and you're making debt payments, it means your budget is probably expanded to the capacity of what you can handle right now. Again, even if it's not an additional expense, it's a possibility, it's a volatility of expense when you own your own home where something breaks, you can't call the landlord and have them fix it. You got to pay for it. So I think you got to wipe out all other debt, free up whatever cash flow is currently going towards debt, make sure that you have it in reserve to go towards your home. Secondly, like I said, the second part of that is having 6 months cash in reserve, 6 months to cover your normal cost of living in reserve as your lifestyle currently is right now. It's one thing if you have a financial disruption in your life and you can't pay your bills with your apartment. It could mess up your credit. It could set you back. It could be really, really painful. But it's a whole other level of problem if you have a financial disruption and you can't pay your mortgage. And this isn't 2007, all right? The bank's not going to let you live in the house for a year. They're coming for your house if you have a problem, and it's going to wreck your life for years. Trust me, I have been through enough real estate transactions on the other side of it where, frankly, as an investor, I'm benefiting from somebody else's crisis, but it is what it is. You never want to be on the other side of that crisis, having to, whether it's short sell your house or get out of your house or God forbid, just totally lose your house, lose your down payment, lose your equity. You don't even want to be considering having that big of an ongoing financial liability. And again, this isn't a video about whether or not you should own your home, but understand that a mortgage, until you own your home free and clear, it is much more of a liability than an asset. And you don't want to take on a liability like that unless you know that you're pretty well insulated from financial disruptions. Again, that may be a harsh perspective, but I believe it's a real perspective, and I believe it's a valuable perspective for people who have ears to hear it, that you want to have no other debt and you want to have 6 months cash in reserve in the bank, totally liquid, not tied up in some investment that would take time to liquidate. Then you can start considering setting a budget and beginning the process of looking for your own home. So the second step is you want to figure out your budget before looking at houses. So many people, a lot of times couples especially, they find a house, they fall in love with a house, and then they go home and they start trying to reverse engineer their finances to figure out how they're going to pay for that house. That is a financial disaster waiting to happen. Figure out what your budget is before looking at houses. Figure out what your budget, accounting for, repairs, accounting for cost of insurance, all that stuff, and figure out what you can afford based on this formula. Do a 15-year note, and the principal, principal and interest on the note, plus the current property taxes and the cost to insure the home, all together should not be more than 25% of what you currently generate on a predictable basis in income. Take home, not before tax, but after tax. 25% of what you take home in cash should cover the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on a 15-year note at whatever dollar amount you think you can afford. Then and only then, once you've figured out that number and you've worked backwards, say, okay, how much house can we buy? Or how much of a note can we take, right? In order to not get reamed on interest, you're going to want to make sure that you have 20% down set aside on top of the 6 months of living expenses. So that's separate. Those are two different buckets. Have 20% of the down payment. And so the note amount that you can afford is going to be 80% of the total price of what you can afford for the house. And I like to say have a solid 4% set aside for closing costs. So it's actually 24% of the price of the home that you want to have set aside in cash to cover the down payment and closing costs, because you don't want to finance your closing costs. It's just paying interest on fees, which is a financial train wreck. Those aren't in order, but that plus making sure you get your credit in good working order, because, and frankly, those kind of have to go together, because you're not going to be able to calculate your principal and interest payment on a note without having some idea what your interest rate's going to be, which is going to depend on your credit. That's I think I have multiple videos about how to build credit, but that's obviously a whole other piece of the equation. And then you want to have a pre-qualification letter from a lender that says, based on this person's credit, based on this person's income, based on this person's savings, based on this person's total financial profile, we're willing to loan them up to this amount of money. All that to say, 20% down payment, 4% for closing costs, ideally 700 plus credit if you're in the US. I know other countries have different scoring systems, and a bank pre-qualification letter. Then and only then do you start looking at houses. And you may go, my gosh, Jeff, I'm not going to be looking at houses for 3 years with everything you just laid out. Hey, here's what I'll tell you. It is way better to live on a budget, to scrimp and save and do what you got to do for 3 years, 5 years, whatever, before you get into the biggest financial decision of most people's lives, probably of your life, and have it be in a way that could go bad because you were in a hurry. I say look at 10 houses minimum. And one thing that I really, really encourage new home buyers to think about that they may not be thinking about yet, school districts. A lot of people who don't have kids don't think school district when they buy a house. But in a lot of markets, what school district you're in has a huge impact on the long-term value, the appreciation, and the resellability of the house. In other words, not just what price you can get for it, but also how quickly it'll move. And if it's in a good school district, it gives you some seasonal advantages where if you decide you want to get out of the house, you know that, hey, you can list it at the beginning of the summer, and there's a decent chance you'll be out by the end of the summer because you'll have people wanting to move in coordination with the school schedule for fall enrollment. So think school district, even if you don't have kids yet, all right? Those are the 5 things. Paying off all debt and having 6 months in cash reserve. Second is figuring out your budget before you look at the house, and we went over the formula for that. Third is having the money set aside and the good credit to cover down payment and closing costs and getting a pre-qual letter in place. Fourth is looking at 10 houses minimum before you make a decision, before you even submit an offer. And then fifth is thinking school districts, even if you don't have kids, all right? So that's a mouthful. That's a lot of work to do. Again, you might be going, that's going to be years before I buy a house. I promise you, it's better to wait a few years to make a really solid decision than to rush into making a decision that could end up setting you back a decade or more in your financial life, okay? So that said, that's my 2 cents on tips to buying your first home. I invite you to subscribe to my channel. You might say, well, what's the thread here? What's he trying to weave together? Look, the bottom line is I am obsessed and I'm on a mission with helping people have an awesome life. Largely that has to do with finances. I help people make good decisions with the money they have, and I'm really, really passionate about helping them make more money. Because, like, for example, this conversation, want to buy a house? Great. Figure out your budget. Want to buy a nicer house? Great. Make more money so you have a higher budget. So a lot of my videos are teaching people how they can generate more income, build, some kind of a side hustle, generate additional income, or eventually even enough income to replace their job if that's what they're into. But in all cases, I help people have an awesome life. It's my passion. I've been a digital marketer for over 10 years now and been able to create an amazing life for myself. Now I do investing, now I do teaching, and I want this amazing life for everyone, so I made my YouTube channel. So that said, if you'll subscribe, I would much appreciate it. Make sure you click the bell so you get notified as new videos come out, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care.